wait a moment or two. We encourage you to put your Menti code in.
And I just put it in again in the chat in case you came later and because you won't see the chat that has been
like to know who you
there
are
beforehand. So go to menti.com and use the code 8462622. And we are curious to hear what's your current role.
We give just a moment more. Consultant coach. I think we should probably go ahead, Jutta.
Okay. So, well, now there are a few people coming in.
Here's a few more.
You still want to go ahead, or you want to wait one more minute or so?
Maybe we can wait for a few seconds because people are still joining in.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. We have 8 people now who have answered the Menti question. So if you go to menti.com and type in 8462622 and let us know what is your current role. So we know a little bit about you. So, Monica, what do you think? Shall we get started? Or
I would
do you recommend us to wait?
I would suggest in the interest of time, maybe we can get started. We are already 3 minutes past the session time. So.
Okay. So, John, over to you, I guess.
Sure. Thanks. That we have some sense as to who you are now. Thank you very much. We're going to be talking today not about just agility, but agility for your whole company. And we're going to be looking at the question, how can you find out whether your company is actually agile or the degree to which it's actually agile? And we're going to be using something called that provides some nice testing abilities or testing service for finding out such questions.
Actually, it's an American company. However, one of the founders is Norwegian, and it's why for us it often seems like it's Norway.
These days, it's hard to know.
It's true. Where are people from? Very true.
Right. Okay. And so the question is, well, why do you care about your company being agile? And of course, it's the big VUCA of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity of our times. You never know what's going on. For example, COVID is a great example of VUCA. And we, of course, don't know what it will be like as the vaccines come in, and there are many more uncertainties about the world that mean that the whole company has to be able to shift and move. I'm sure you all can think of companies that haven't done that, and they're not around anymore. The example would be you don't own a Kodak camera. You might have before digital cameras came, but they didn't shift in time. So it's really quite an important topic. And so how volatile are we? And Jutta, why don't I turn it to you?
Well, VUCA actually ask companies to be agile in order to be able to respond to these times like COVID or whatever kind of uncertainty, complexity, volatility, ambiguity you are seeing there. However, we really want to make that clear that asking for companies to be agile doesn't mean that the companies will be using, for example, Scrum at all places. For example, the board of directors using a Scrum meeting for, or stand up, or having a Scrum master for running their meetings and so on, because that might make the meetings better, but it wouldn't make the company any more agile. So what we think of agile here is actually companies to be fast, responsive, flexible, nimble, all of that, and this in various aspects. And this is where the Bossa Nova comes from. So we are looking at what makes a company agile really from many different perspectives. Like if you fix your budget a year in advance, you're probably not very flexible. That's the beyond budgeting part. Or if you are not inviting people to use their full potential, that's the open space part, then you probably are not innovative enough. Or if you keep the power being centralized and decision-making centralized, you're too slow when making decisions. And if you are not continuously inspect and adapt, then you are also having troubles to survive and thrive through these VUCA times. So we would now like to take a sample survey on how you would assess your own company and how agile it is. And the sample survey is really, as it says, it's a sample of a full assessment. And we decided to only look for these 5 questions. And I put in the chat here again the Menti link plus the code 4144245. And we would like you to answer based on how you look at your company. For example, do teams understand their responsibilities in the context of the whole company? Is this true? Or is this false, or is this somewhere in the middle, or halfway through, or wherever? Or then what would you say for your company? Is the company's internal alignment, does this result in meeting or exceeding customer expectations? And still, we are waiting for you to answer these questions by going to menti.com and enter the code 4144245. Another statement here is, in your company, does trust guide all collaboration, or is it more control? And another thing that we are looking for, and I wonder now, do you have, okay, now the first are coming in.
I encourage you to do the Menti. We had some people doing it on the entry thing, and it's really important that we get a number of people participating. So go to the menti.com and enter the code 4144245. It's in the chat. Back to you.
And we have one answer right now, and there's another one. Very good. So, and another statement, another question we are asking you to answer, and we also know it takes a bit of time to reflect on how would you answer it. That's clear as well. So another statement is, teams you are familiar with, do they develop by reflecting on their situation and create exploratory probes following good experimental design? Is this true? Is it false? Halfway through, somewhere? And the last statement of this sample survey is your company, does this company demonstrate societal responsibility by respecting the people and its communities? So again, we would like you to keep answering this, and we really know it really takes a bit of time to reflect on the statements and think of, oh, how is my company really doing? And maybe you don't know everything. That's why we sometimes say, like, oh, you are familiar with. So what is it that you can answer in terms of the company-wide agility of your company here. And what we see right now, and that might change if more people keep answering, is that, for example, for the second statement here, oh, I thought I can use the laser, but I can't. So if I go over it, you see already how the votings were. However, it's really more towards it's kind of true. So the company's internal alignment results in meeting exceeding customer expectations. That is really great. Then we see in the third statement that you see these heaps, like here's a heap and here's a heap. So it seems like people are on either side. So we don't have really anyone in the middle here. So you see by looking at the heaps, or here it's very slow at the beginning because nobody really thinks that's false, or well, it's not completely false, but kind of maybe a bit of false. And you can still answer, by the way. We only have 7 answers right now. And then you see that heap building up towards the true, whereas here we have a higher heap at the beginning. And so by looking at it this way, and if you would do an assessment like that for your own company, you would see the spread of what people think, what their perspective is on how we are doing as a company in implementing agility here, really. So I guess we are now going to, well, what are we actually looking at here? And we said already it's a sample survey. And the sample looks at 5 dimensions, and we have a question or statement from all of these dimensions here. And the first 4 dimensions we have been looking at are actually those 4 that are the values, that are values guiding company-wide agility. They are transparency, self-organization, continuous learning, and constant customer focus. There is also coming a definition with every of those values. And that definition guides, again, what you are doing if you are applying company-wide agility. And we want to look into one of them. Well, we will look into all of them a bit, but one in more depth here. However, maybe we give you a bit more time to read the definitions, or we should just go ahead, John.
Why don't we give just a moment to read the definitions? And the one you're going to be focusing on first, which one is that?
That's self-organization.
Okay, so you might want to really look at self-organization.
Well, we will show that in more detail right away. Yeah. And you will actually drill down on that.
These values are extensions or generalizations in some sense of the manifesto values.
I guess we will now look into like the first value and drill down on that. And John, I invite you to do that.
Okay, so accountable and cross-functional teams that select themselves and follow their passion with responsibility. So think about if you know how your company is operating, and are the teams all siloed, or are they self-selecting and working across teams, across specialties to really resolve things, and everybody's identifying with what they're doing? If the latter, then you're likely to be self-organizing. You're likely to be quite agile because people will be responding to what's happening. And so this is the first value, and we have 5 different ways or questions to be measuring that. The question that you answered is the second one here that's in bold, that the teams understand the responsibilities in the context of the whole company. Other ways of kind of trying to get at that are some of these other questions referring to the definition, which we just saw, which is the very first one. We use that as a way of assessing it. And then how do you personally feel? The first are asking for generalized responses, general judgment. And then a couple of other questions that sort of poke at the same definition. One of my favorites is equivalence is ensured by collaborative decision making. There's special ways of accomplishing that. So when you look at one of these parameters by doing the survey and assessing it, then you have some clues as to if it's split or whatever, what, for digging into what's going on. Jutta, do you have anything to add to this?
No, I guess we can now look into how would it look like if it wouldn't be a sample survey, but the real survey. And how would it look like if we just now look at self-organization, and that's
right,
a sample from a different company.
And so this is a different way of looking at what we just saw. And you can see that the average is 3.45, but there are some above and some below. And so then you can say, all right, on that last question, what's the clue on that last question? The people are rating that last question lower, even though everything else is pretty much, everybody's got an opinion that it's better than midway. And so then that gives you the clue to say, well, what is it about that aspect of self-organization that seems deficient? Then you can use lots of ways, drawing people together and having them reflect on it, just like a retrospective, to say what is it? Why are we rating that lower? And then you can start getting some clues as to, okay, we're doing this or we're doing that, and it would be actually better if we did such and such. And that's the value in this, is to be giving you objective data to lead to more informed reflection.
Now, looking at the next value, that is transparency, where the statement says, well, the definition of transparency is great transparency for all involved in 2 directions by providing information and lowering the barriers to those seeking information. And I would like to jump right into what else would an assessment show you, or what is a different way the assessment would show you or analyze the results of when you are answering these questions with your company. And at first, it's kind of the same thing as you see with the bar, but it's just a different visual representation. So this is a radar now. And for that radar, and again, this is not your answers, but this is a real answer from a company. And here you see as well, different than the bars before, you see all the different statements that have been asked for, if they are true or false, more true than false, or right in between. So here, these are also 5 statements, just as you have seen them in self-organization. There it was also like 5, but not every dimension has 5 statements. So, and as John said already, with the bar view that you have seen before, what you are seeing here is okay for trust guides, all collaborational control, which was actually one of the questions you have answered in our sample survey. So this is where this company does quite good. However, on that statement where it says inspection and adaptation happens in all the areas on all organizational levels with which I'm personally familiar. So there it seems they need to get some work done. And so in this way, you can look at like all the different values. We are skipping now the other 2 values and go to the 5th dimension. Unless, John, do you have to add something here?
No, it's funny about these radar graphs. There's something about the shape. If it's not quite round, then you look at the flat stuff, and I actually like this shape better than the bar graphs because it seems more holistic, or you get a more of a different way of looking at it. But it's and it's visual. So for all the visual learners out there, it's kind of a way that, like, okay, we need to get it more round. How do we push it out?
Yeah.
And it also asks you, I think where the value is that it shows you that there may be a relationship between the company comments to effective engagement with stakeholders, which is over on the left, with the thing that's up over there on the right. And it encourages you to ask, how are those two related? You know, maybe there's two factors going on. Everybody's like, okay, pretty good on these other things, but are those two related? And what are we doing that would cause both those to come down? And that's the information I think that you get, that you don't see maybe quite so readily on the bar charts. So just another way of looking at it, but a way that causes you to think in a little bit differently, perhaps.
Okay. So then, as we said, so there were those, and maybe I jump back just quickly. So the assessment looks on the one hand on all of those 4 values, and we have just by example only picked out transparency and in way more detail self-organization. The same would be true for continuous learning and constant customer focus. We are not drilling down on those right now. However, maybe you remember, and I'm now jumping back also to your answers before, that we said this sample survey is based on 5 different dimensions. And so there's a statement for each of the dimensions. And so we are looking now at the 5th after you have seen the 4 values, and I'm jumping there. Sean.
Right. Yeah. So we need a little bit of background on what this 5th dimension is, and so hang on to your hat here for a little bit of theory here. This should look like a rough idea of your company's organization. Presuming that you're in a for-profit company, you've got shareholders, and they elect a board of directors, and the board elects a chief executive officer, and then you have all kinds of people in a work breakdown structure below reporting to that chief executive officer. Probably the most basic breakdown you see is you have the support systems, the marketing and the HR and all that, and then you have the production, whatever you're doing, and it can go many levels if it's a large company. You'll notice that this is a one-directional power structure. It goes the power flows from the top to the bottom, and you can ask about what happens with a feedback loop. Maybe we should do a company survey to see what people think. Then we can ignore the results of that if we feel like it, because we are in charge. And so the feedback may not get to the people that need to be making adjustments. And the example in Kodak that I mentioned earlier, I spoke once to the former chief marketing officer there, and he said that Kodak had a building in Rochester, New York that was 12 stories tall, and there was an elevator that went up the outside of the building from the bottom with no stops up to the very top, so that the executives didn't have to talk with the workers when they went to work, and didn't have to be in the same elevator with them. They wanted to be the kings. And of course, that's the ultimate in the top-down way of doing things. And Kodak the people on the 12th floor never caught what the people on the 11th floors below knew, which was that the whole silver halide way of doing pictures was about to go down the tubes. And they in fact, the ones down on the lower floors managed to get a few patents that kept the company going after it collapsed. But they never got the feedback. There was never a collaboration happening.
And
so let's
just sorry to interrupt just quickly. So just to be sure you understand, so Kodak didn't collapse. They are actually doing well, but they collapsed with the
They
film.
collapsed. They
so
went way
they have
down, and then they were
other
able to come back
industries
up.
where they are not. Yeah.
Right, but they're not making cameras anymore. They're doing
Yes.
other sorts of things. So the fact that the people on the lower levels were able to get patents despite the guidance from above kept the company alive, and you know, it was able to rebuild. But it's not what it was. That it collapsed to almost nothing.
So what's actually needed for a company that's really agile, I think, John, you can elaborate on that as well.
Sure. So what's an alternative way of looking at how a company could be run? We have still over on the left-hand side, we have the board and the CEO. So that doesn't go away if you have a more balanced, agile company, if you have one that is focused on a value center approach where you have cross-functional teams that are getting things done. Then you have a power relationship that goes not only on the left-hand side, from the board to the CEO down to the staff. There is an equally powerful feedback loop going back up to the board. You have a same kind of relationship if you look at up above to the inspiration that has you doing the kind of work you're doing. You get inspiration, and hopefully you're also talking back to your inspiration, saying, well, that's nice, and we need to prioritize, or whatever you need to do to keep the passion in a responsibility. Support service teams, the folks in the legal department may be saying, no, you can't do something. And then you need to be able to say equally well back to the legal team, okay, what can we do to meet this objective, and have a dialogue around that. And that's the same thing with HR and budgeting people and so forth. All those support functions need to be there, and they should be right there with the cross-functional team, not sitting back and saying, okay, you tried that for 6 months, now we're going to tell you that that's no good. So it should be an intimate relationship. And then, of course, with the customer, everybody's used to the arrow going to the left here from customer to team, saying we like this, or we want that, or we don't like that. But it's very interesting the way you deliver the product. You can actually create customer satisfaction by the way you deliver your product, by the way you check, are they satisfied? You can actually you create what you're looking for if you're doing it in an effective way. So all these different forces and entities need to be both giving guidance to the team, getting things done, as well as receiving feedback, so that there's a true dialogue going between all these aspects of a company. And that's more almost the complete picture of what an agile company looks like. Should we try the next picture, Jutta?
Actually, I want to just kind of add something, which is whenever we are working with people and asking them to draw a diagram how their company would look like if they take this perspective, by having the value center in the middle at the core, and then how are they connected to the outside, then it's very often exactly how well, John was stressing, do you see how balanced the arrows are? They're equally strong. And this is what John repeatedly said. And what we see when people draw the diagram of their organization, that often there is an arrow missing. For example, there might be this arrow missing, or there is only like in one direction, the arrow is strong to the customer maybe, but the other direction is very weak. And so this already tells often a lot what is the status you are in with your organization by just taking this perspective and trying to draw it. Now,
thanks, Jutta. And
just
I like that. And so what the questions do is they tell you the strength of these arrows.
That is true.
So this gives you another way of looking at your data. What are we not getting the kind of opportunity to feed back to the support teams or whatever it happens to be?
And the questions actually look to a little bit more than that even. So what you see here on this picture is kind of the inward looking of an organization. However, no organization is really an island. So an organization is connected to the society, its environment, the communities, and all of that. And it is so in those various areas here. And I'm not sure, well, you can at least zoom in so you might be able to read it better. So it can be that it has to do with what the society, the government, or so on rules, or it could be like if we look at the inspiration path, then it's more like what is the crowd doing, or what are other sources of inspiration, or do we kind of an open source also in terms of our innovative strategy. Then also like looking at partnerships with the customer, so reaching further out. So the connected perspective that you are seeing here is all about understanding that no company is an island, and every company is interconnected to the world around itself. And so the questions in the survey are actually looking more to that. And I see, John, you wanted to add something.
Just to add that in India, the laws of the country, like, you know, the social responsibility laws, you have to put a certain amount into social responsibility, have gone ahead and said, okay, we're giving you the context here, companies, that we're defining what it is. In the US, just recently, in the last year, there's something called the Business Roundtable, which is the CEOs of many of the biggest companies made a declaration that said, by the way, the sole purpose of a company is no longer to serve the shareholders. We have to be responsible for the society we're living in. So even the US now is really starting to adopt this perspective of things. Thank you for being ahead of us, India.
Okay, so now looking at this fifth dimension, going back to the survey, the sample survey that you have done, and I move over to you, John. So these are the assessment questions.
Right, so this connected perspective that we've just been talking about, the question that you answered is the third one here in bold. The company demonstrates societal responsibility by respecting the people in its communities. That's one of the ways of looking at what is this connected perspective all about. The definition of it here is on the top line, the language the company uses in its communications. It's all encompassing, and there's no differentiating between us and them, shareholders and customers. You have a we in the language the company is using. And there are other things like the 2 lines below the bolded line, the 5th dot down, I believe, the company balances profits, vision, customer service, and adherence to regulations. That's the framework that we showed you, and so forth. It looks at all the different aspects of relating to the society as a whole, and asks really how well you're connected to the world, and you know, what's strong and what's not strong about your connections. It's an area that is really become, I think, of getting more attention since the manifesto was done. The Agile Manifesto, you can see it in the first 4 dimensions. This isn't an add-on, but it's an extremely crucial one if the company is really to be agile as a whole, agile in the context that it works in.
Okay,
Jutta,
now
we're doing pretty well on time, but
yes,
we should probably be moving on, I think.
Right, so you keep going.
Here's one more way of looking at the data, and this adds the dimension of what's the spread of opinion that we didn't see in the radar chart and we didn't see in the bar graph. We did see a little bit in the Menti, but not quite as precise as it might be. So what this is saying, and these 3 dashes in the middle, is that everybody agrees. It's absolutely that. And on the one just to the left of those, there's a big, wide range of opinion. that is more like the kind of thing we saw in a couple of the Menti questions. There's a huge wide spread. And then there is other things that you see. There's the ones that are below the line and ones that are above the line, and there's a spread on those. And so that, what's the range, can then let you ask, why is the range as it is? Why do we agree so much on these three things in the middle? And then there's this other thing, we are going from a 5 to a 3, and what's that all about? And
maybe just in case you lost track and making it more like an example, if we look at, so for the statement 3 here, people disagreed a lot. So it's the lowest number is here, the highest is here, and then the next to it, everyone agreed. And if we now look at this, what statements these were, then maybe it gets a little bit more concrete. So the one where the disagreement was actually the one that you answered as well. So people didn't agree. Now for the fourth one, fourth, fifth, sixth, they all said, well, this is how we think we are doing. And just to make it more maybe concrete, what do those numbers mean? And again, it's not like what you have answered, it's a sample from a company. Sorry, John.
Oh, I appreciate it. Yeah, thanks. It's nice to tie that back there. So although all these questions are related to connected perspective, you now, with the survey, have a more detailed look at that and say, well, why are, if it's one dimension, what are the things going on here? And that then can lead to a deep reflection about what can we do so that we really are in touch, agile, and with what's happening in the world. And it can be for the whole company. You can ask for a division in the company and so forth. It doesn't have to be the whole company.
Right.
You can get really good data, even in just your specific department.
And so for this view that we see here, so the interesting thing is, again, not only how much do we agree. If we all agree we are down low here, then this of course tells us also something. However, at least we all have all the same perspective. Whereas if we look at a spread like this, then it tells us more something. Oh, how come that we look at this thing from so many different angles and we assess it in a completely different way? And this then motivates your next step on your journey towards company-wide agility. Now, I think I move on.
Yes.
Is that fine? Okay. So we have now drilled down into the 5 dimensions and have showed you what the report could look like if you take that assessment with your company and what it can inform you for your next steps. However, drilling down is not the only thing that's interesting. What's also interesting is take a step back and take a holistic look at it. And now we are repeating a few that you have seen already. That's again the radar. However, the radar is now looking at those 5 dimensions: self-organization, continuous learning, transparency, connected perspective, constant customer focus. And you can, of course, now again drill down. For example, you could then click on constant customer focus and look at, okay, why is this, again, it's a different company, why is this actually the lowest for us here compared to all the others? What kind of problem are we having here? And you can learn more about how that comes and what is it that we can do in order to move forward in our agile journey, which, again, remember how we started, which helps us to survive and thrive on disruption and on VUCA and dealing with that. Anything else here?
Jutta, I'm realizing that in shortening the presentation, we took out the sum total of the questions. If you want these questions so that you can use them to survey in your company, just drop us a line that you'll get these slides, but I'm just realizing that we don't have all the questions in it.
Well, but you can actually, that's a good point that you're saying that. Actually, you can also find all those questions if you go to that link, and you could answer them right in the real thing. And the other thing is, we are also offering a workshop with Agility Today, where we are going through the whole surveys, whole assessment, where you can then look at how it's really working for you and what it would do for you.
So, and again, where is that, when is the Agile presentation? Because we'll be going into this in more depth then.
So that's actually on our last slide. Do you want me to jump forward to that last slide?
Why don't we do that, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right away. Okay, so this is our last slide. We come back again, but this is so our workshop on that topic. You can be more agile based on data is on March 13, and the QR code will lead you to the registration. So
I was encouraging us to go ahead because just wanting to make sure we have time for question answer.
Yeah, we will, I guess. Okay, so this is where we were, and this is kind of what we told you, which is, where did we look at? We looked at the values, we looked at the connected perspective. So these 5 things in totals, 4 values plus a connected perspective, they inform company-wide agility, and you can assess how are you doing on your journey and what would be the next step for you to do. So this is kind of what you can learn with that. And I guess for us, it's now on, oh, I see a question. Yeah, and I wonder if we take the question now. So I see the question, is this survey was done only in software companies? Actually, no, it is for all kinds of companies, and well, everyone can also answer it. So it's not, however, especially me, I am based in software. So my experience is mainly coming from software. John, is there more?
I'm
broader?
All over the place, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so it's an important thing. The wonderful technology that the software companies have developed. In many companies, you'll see a bank or something, they'll say, well, how do we go, bring this technology that's so successful to the rest of the company, the people that maintain the buildings or whatever. And as Jutta said at the very beginning, you're not going to have a scrum coach sitting in a boardroom. You can't take the Agile Manifesto and go into the kitchen of a restaurant and say, tell us about your software. Software documentation is not as important as software, working software. Well, that doesn't apply to the chef there, but it's good for them to be able to adopt the Agile principles, which they can, which is why they've been generalized. And so, yeah, that's a really important point. And many of you may be working for software companies, but maybe you've got friends that aren't, and you can help them out. We would like to see the whole world be much more agile.
And maybe a last comment on that, which is, okay, I'm biased because my home is software, yet I also believe with digitalization, software is all over the place, and therefore there's hardly a company that's not having software really. And very often the product that they're thinking they're having is a non-software one, but often the differentiator is done by software. And again, that's me being biased here. Okay, we would now like to hear from you before we sum up, and really want to take as much time as possible for Q&A. So the question that we want, or what we would like to hear from you, and again, going to Menti, what's the most important or maybe surprising concept that you learned today? And sorry, John, I just saw I took over here. However, here's the Menti and the code. And we are, so again, if you go to menti.com, and the code is 542721 Oh, what is it that you found really important or surprising?
And that's in the chat.
The link, yeah,
yes,
to the Menti.
And while you're doing that, if you have further questions, go ahead and put them in the chat.
Nothing important, nothing surprising today.
If you haven't done the Menti yet, you might want to try it.
Yeah, maybe this is the surprising thing, the Menti, who knows? So the thing we were looking at is actually Agile at the company level, so not at a team level, and how you can use data in order to find out how well are you doing in this what's sometimes called an Agile transformation. I personally don't really like that, because transformation sounds like you're going from here to there and then you're at your destination, but actually there is no such thing as a destination. It's more a journey that's ongoing. Anything else? Then analyzing survey charts, which is the important thing is, of course, first collecting the data and then make meaning of the data. So what can you do with the data that you've collected, and how would the data then inform your next step in your Agile journey? Anyone else? Anything important, surprising? If you go to Menti.com and enter the code 5427210.
And also, please feel free to ask any other questions before we wrap up. Okay, why don't we wrap it up, Jutta? Oh, here we go. Here's a bunch of stuff coming in. All right.
How to measure things go in loop in org. Yeah, like everywhere else.
Right. That's the making sure there's good feedback loops is a big deal today. It's very easy to think you know how things are and then not really listen to the feedback. Focus on one corner. If you are willing to say a little bit more about that, that's interesting, and I'm not quite understanding what you mean.
No, so I was actually thinking more of the triangle for the strategy, and how, I mean, you can't just focus on one thing. All of them actually go together, but still you can always start focusing, and then when you focus, the other two derivative for the other two corners also come out, and so then you keep putting them on three corners of the triangle as you show. What was surprising for me, especially also when I said for the first time in the Bossa Nova workshop, is what I realized that they go hand in hand. So of course you can start with one corner, but you will realize that you're touching the other two corners as well. That was a discovery for me. Yeah.
Okay, good.
That's true. Like starting somewhere, but still having a holistic perspective on it. Yeah, very true. I see there's a question, and I think for taking that question, we first go to like our summary slide, and then we take Charu's question. Maybe do you, or did I now interfere, John?
No, go ahead.
So what we think it is in essence is applying key metrics for your Agile journey, because otherwise you will not know how you're doing and if you are really going in the right direction and if it's helpful, and how is everyone seeing your Agile journey And then you decide your next actions based on like how you agree or disagree with the various statements, and also about like strength and weaknesses. Where are you scoring high? Where are you scoring low? And you can also, by repeatedly looking at this survey, verify that indeed something has changed, hopefully for the better, because you will see also kind of a trend over the time if you take that assessment more often. And I think with that, we go for the questions, and there's this one. Do you want to take it, John?